Welcome to another League Lowdown, where it's time to pick a new country to focus on. And the FM gods are sending us to beautiful Ukraine, home to cosmopolitan cities and no shortage of World Heritage sites. This is the nation known as the breadbasket of Europe, where the underground network runs deeper than any other in the world, where the national drink is known as burning water, and where famous boxers become mayor of the country's capital, and comedians go on to be elected president. But we're here for Ukraine's football. What teams can we manage? How does the league work? We'll find out in the League Lowdown Guide to Ukraine. Welcome to the League Lowdown Ukraine. Now, so far on this series, we've tried to tap into the knowledge of some of the experts about the different countries that we focused on. Roxend FM helped us in Argentina. Michelino FM helped us in Sweden, although I think he wants to distance himself from some of my Swedish pronunciations. And when we looked at Russia, we relied on the knowledge of Mr. Spaceman. And today is no different. To help me learn all about the Ukrainian League, I relied on the teachings of FM Zenio, who you can follow on Twitter. We'll put links down in the description below, as well as links to everybody that's been kind enough to help us so far. But without further ado, let's have a look at the league structure in Ukraine. So Ukraine is one of those nations that's currently going through a little bit of a revamp of its league structure. The start of the 2019 campaign saw just 12 teams in the top flight. But for the current campaign, that's already been increased to 14, and for the 2021-22 season, it's going to expand further to 16 teams. The way they are facilitating that is currently only one team is getting relegated out of the top flight, whereas 3 teams are getting promoted. The team that got relegated last season was Karpaty Lviv, so they will be in the second division come FM21. The winners of the top division get into the Champions League, along with the team placed second place as well. The third place team and the cup winners go into the Europa League, and there's usually a playoff between teams placed 4th down to 7th for the Europa Conference League spot as well. If we drop into the division below, that's already at 16 teams, with 4 teams getting relegated out of it. The teams that were promoted to the top flight, ready for FM21, were Ingolets Petrov as well as Minai, and the final team that gained promotion were Lviv as well. So that's how the league structure currently works in Ukraine. They're undergoing a period of expansion for the top flight. But who are the teams that we might be tempted to take charge of? The list of former winners of the Ukrainian top division reveals that this is a nation dominated by 2 absolute powerhouses. If we start in the capital with Dynamo, well, this is a club with a history pretty much unrivaled throughout the former Soviet Union, having been the club that won the Soviet top division the most times with 13 league titles. That's more than any of the big clubs from Moscow were able to match. They won the Soviet Cup 9 times as well. And since the inception of the Ukrainian League in 1992, well, they've won that on 15 occasions and won the Ukrainian Cup 11 times. But were also the first team from the former Soviet Union to win a European competition as well. In 1975, they beat Ferencváros to win the UEFA Cup, a feat they repeated in the 80s when they beat Atletico Madrid. In the 70s, they then went on and won the UEFA Super Cup as well. So this is a team that has tasted European success. But over recent years, one of the rivals from Ukraine has just started to match them when it comes to the number of domestic titles that they've won. And that team is Shakhtar, the team from Donetsk, who are currently exiled from their home because of the political tensions that exist in the east of the country. This is a club that did not have a particularly successful history during the Soviet era, only winning the Soviet top league on 1 occasion. But since the inception of the Ukrainian League, well, they have emerged as the second powerhouse of Ukrainian football. They won the title in the most recent campaign, taking the number of Ukrainian titles they have up to 13, equaling the number of cup competitions that they've won in the nation as well. But Significantly, they also won the 2009 UEFA Cup, beating Werder Bremen in the final, making them the only team from Ukraine that's won a European competition since the fall of the Soviet Union. If we go back to the list of league winners, that now means that Shakhtar won the last 4 domestic titles. So if you like the idea of taking charge of a team that is currently top dogs in a nation, Shakhtar are the team for you. But if you want the challenge of restoring Dynamo to the top table of Ukrainian football, well, that might be an interesting challenge too, taking either of those clubs to a Champions League victory, something that no Ukrainian team has done. Well, that could be an interesting challenge as well, but for many, taking charge of a nation's top clubs might not be what they're looking for. Let's have a look at some of the other challenges that are out there with Ukrainian teams. Taking charge of any club outside of the Big Two is a difficult proposition in Ukraine, but one of the teams that's currently providing the closest challenge to Dynamo and Shakhtar is Zorya. Now, this is a club that actually managed to win the Soviet title on one occasion. In fact, they were the first provincial side that was able to win the Soviet top division. They've not won the Ukrainian League, they've not won the Ukrainian Cup either. But Zorya, which means dawn in Ukrainian, were the runners-up in the Cup in the 2015-16 season, and over the last 6 seasons, they've not finished outside of the top 5, even finishing 3rd during the last campaign, and they're currently in the same Europa League group as Leicester City. So in terms of challengers to the Big Two, Zorya are one of the teams that are trying to contend with them, but there's a couple more that we might be able to look at. Another of those clubs is Desna, who produced the likes of Oleg Kuznetsov that played for Glasgow Rangers, as well as current West Ham player Andrei Yarmolenko. This is a team that didn't even reach the Ukrainian top division until 2 seasons ago, but in that time they finished 8th, and in the last campaign they were 4th. So this is one of the newer clubs that's emerging to try and challenge the dominance of Ukraine's duopoly. Outside of those 2 challenges, the team that finished 5th in the Ukrainian League last season was Alexandria. They finished 5th the season before that. They're in the group stages of this year's Europa League. So if you like the idea of taking charge of a challenger rather than an already established dominant force, well, there's 3 teams that you might be interested in. But are there any more obscure challenges that you could take charge of in a Ukrainian game of Football Manager? Well, one interesting proposition could be to take charge of the club FC Minai, a team that was only founded in 2015 and 2 seasons ago was playing in Ukraine's 3rd division. In FM20, you'll find them in the 2nd tier of Ukrainian football. For FM21, you'll find them promoted to the top league as champions. This really is a club on the up, and geographically they're an interesting team as well. They're right from the furthest western point of Ukraine, right on the Slovakian border. Not far from the Hungarian border either. And if you like the idea of taking charge of one of Ukraine's much smaller top flight teams and trying to establish some kind of history with a club that was only recently formed, well, Minai might be an interesting proposition for you. If you like the idea of taking charge of a fallen giant, well, Ukraine is a difficult nation to do that in, given the continued dominance of the Big Two. But there is one club that has managed to win the Ukrainian top division outside of Shakhtar and Dynamo, and the club in question is Tavria Simferopol. But taking charge of them is complicated. This is a club that hails from Crimea, a region that's now disputed between Ukraine and Russia. When those tensions began in 2014, Tavria Simferopol transferred from the Ukrainian league system into the Russian league system, but then UEFA refused to recognise teams from Crimea playing in the Russian league. So now UEFA have established the Crimean Premier League, which Tavria Simferopol won in their first season during the last campaign. But there's also a second iteration of Tavria that now play in the Ukrainian 3rd division as well. With a data editor, you could take charge of that club and try and take the team Tavria back to the top of Ukrainian football, a place where they've not sat since the first league season back in 1992. But if you like the idea of taking a sleeping giant, well, this could be as close as you get in Ukraine. Whilst not counting as a giant of European football, another club that was far more successful in bygone decades might be Chornomorets from the city of Odessa. This is a club that have a state-of-the-art stadium that was built for Euro 2012, and during the 1990s they managed to secure several top 3 finishes, as well as winning the Ukrainian Cup on 2 occasions as well, and regularly competing in Europe. Currently they're down in Ukraine's 2nd division. So if you like the idea of taking a team from the lowest playable league in FM21 and trying to take them into the Ukrainian top flight and potentially challenge Shakhtar and Dynamo, well, Chornomorets might provide quite an interesting challenge. One unusual feature of football in Ukraine is where larger clubs have their professional licence revoked and are demoted to the amateur leagues due to financial irregularities. Sometimes when this happens, the team disbands, sometimes they carry on as amateurs, sometimes Phoenix clubs are formed as well, and this has certainly been the case in Dnipro. But another Phoenix club that you can take charge of in Football Manager is Metalist 1925, who were formed when Metalist Kharkiv were demoted to the amateur ranks. Now this is a club that certainly has a stadium that's capable of hosting top level football. It just needs a manager to guide them from the 2nd tier back to the big time to try and take on the big 2 in Ukraine. If that sounds like a challenge that appeals to you, well, Metalist Kharkiv might be the club that you take charge of in FM21. So that wraps up our guide to football in Ukraine, a nation that's dominated by 2 absolute powerhouses, but it has Phoenix clubs and it has clubs that have experienced slightly better times during previous eras that you might be able to resuscitate. We will see you very soon as we make another nation the focus of our next League Lowdown.